At a secret military base, a strange man sits alone in a locked room. He quietly takes a small pair of tweezers and starts drawing on the walls, not with a pen, not with a pencil, but by scratching the surface again and again. He keeps working for hours, slowly covering every wall with drawings. He looks tired, weak, but he doesn't stop. Finally, after putting in all his strength, he draws one last image, a detailed picture of a city square in Trieste, Italy, and then he collapses to the floor. A few moments later, a general and a military scientist walk into the room to check on him, but it's too late. The man is dead. It looks like he pushed his body so hard that he died from pure exhaustion. But the big question is, why did he draw that place? Far away from that military base in that same city of Trieste, a young boy named Michele is riding his bicycle to school. On the way, he stops outside a shop window. Inside, he sees something he really wants, a Spider-Man costume. There's a masquerade costume party tonight, and Michele wants to wear that suit so he can finally impress everyone at school, especially Stella, the new girl in his class, the girl he secretly likes. When he reaches school, he sees her, but he just can't gather the courage to talk to her, so instead he secretly records videos of her on his phone. Yeah, not the best move. But just as he's about to record another video, the teacher catches him using his phone in class. As punishment, she takes it away. Not long after that, the school principal walks into the classroom with a police inspector named Giovanna, who also happens to be Michele's mother. She has some serious news. One of the students, Martino, is missing, and she asks the whole class to speak up if they know anything. After giving the warning, Giovanna walks over to Michele and hands him the snack he forgot at home. Now imagine this. Your mom shows up in your classroom in front of everyone while you're already in trouble. Michele gets so nervous and embarrassed that his nose suddenly starts bleeding. Panicking, he quickly asks the teacher if he can go to the bathroom and rushes out of the classroom. But the moment Michele walks in, he gets attacked. Two boys from his class, Brando and Ivan, are waiting for him inside. They're holding a paintball gun and they want his money. They tell him to hand it over. Michele tries to fight back, but he's no match for them. They take all his cash anyway. Then Ivan gives him a cruel offer, 10 seconds to run. Michele takes the chance and runs through the school as fast as he can. But just as he's about to escape down the hallway, he gets shot in the back with a paintball. He falls straight to the ground, and it gets worse. In front of the other students, the boys step on his hand while everyone laughs. Now Michele isn't just hurt, he's completely humiliated. Later that day, he returns home feeling broken, and now he has no money left to buy the Spider-Man costume. When he walks into his room, he sees his younger sister, Candela. Just like him, she also loves superheroes. But Michele doesn't feel like talking. He ignores her and goes straight to the safe, hoping there's still some money left inside. With the little savings he has, he heads back into town to find a cheaper costume. That's when he notices a small Chinese store filled with decorations. Inside, he meets a boy around his age and asks if they have any low-cost superhero costumes. The boy shows him a suit of a hero called Xia, who is very famous in his country. But honestly, the costume looks more like pajamas with an old cape. Still, Michele doesn't have many options, so he buys it. Before leaving, he asks what powers this hero has, but the boy simply smiles and says, "You'll find out for yourself." Later that evening, Giovanna comes back home from work and finds Michele wearing his new costume. But now, he's not even sure if he wants to go to the party anymore. Giovanna encourages him. She tells him that he needs to face his fears, just like his late father once did, a legendary police officer in the city. After hearing this, Michele finally agrees. He puts on the costume and goes to the party. There, he tries his best to stay away from Brando and Ivan, but suddenly he bumps into Stella. She's dressed as Marie Antoinette, and to Michele's surprise, she actually compliments his hero costume. For a moment, things are finally going right. They start talking, laughing, and Michele begins to feel happy. But then Brando sees them together, and he gets jealous. So once again, he decides to ruin Michele's day. He calls the entire class into the hall and reveals that he secretly took Michele's phone from the principal's office. Then he does something terrible. He plays the videos Michele recorded of Stella in class. Everyone watches. Stella feels shocked and uncomfortable and asks Michele if he really did that, but Michele is too ashamed to even speak. Instead, he turns around and tries to run away. But Brando and his gang block all the exits. With nowhere else to go, Michele hides in the bathroom. Now angry and upset, he looks at his cheap costume and yells, "What powers does Xia even have?" And right at that moment, lightning suddenly strikes near the building. The whole city goes into a blackout. After a few seconds, the power comes back, Michele quickly climbs out of the bathroom window and runs all the way back home. Once again, he's been humiliated in front of everyone. The next morning, Michele wakes up to get ready for school, but something feels strange. His little dog, Mario, is staring at him in a weird way. Michele doesn't understand why, but he ignores it since he's already late. Then he walks into the bathroom to brush his teeth, and what he sees terrifies him. His body is completely invisible. He panics. Just then, Giovanna walks into his room, but she can't see him at all. This only makes Michele even more confused, so he quickly writes a note and leaves it on the bed, saying that he went to school early. Giovanna reads the message and leaves for work. Meanwhile, Michele stays in his room not knowing how to turn back to normal. The only thing he can do now is try to hide his invisible body, so he wears gloves, a cap, and dark glasses. When he finally reaches school, he realizes that walking around like this is very risky, so he decides to test something crazy. He takes off all his clothes and walks straight into the classroom. No one sees him. Now he's sure. He really is invisible. And of course, he decides to use it. First, he sneaks over to Ivan's paintball gun and fires it at the blackboard. The teacher gets scared and ends up kicking Ivan out of the class instead. Next target, Brando, who is playing in the school's tennis final. Thanks to his invisibility, Michele keeps messing up Brando's shots. Every time Brando tries to hit the ball, something goes wrong. And in the end, he loses badly in front of everyone. But Michele still isn't done. When Brando goes back to the locker room, Michele throws tennis balls all over the floor and starts talking in a creepy voice. Brando thinks it's a ghost and runs out of the room in fear. Michele can't stop laughing. For his final test, Michele decides to sneak into the girls' changing room, but as he sits there quietly, Stella throws a towel right where he's sitting. The towel suddenly takes the shape of a human body. Confused, Stella reaches out to grab it, and at that exact moment, Michele becomes visible again. The girls scream in shock, and Michele almost gets expelled from school. Things only get worse the next day. All the girls now look at him with disgust. Michele gets nervous and suddenly turns invisible again. Afraid someone might discover his secret, he runs back home, but there Candela sees his floating invisible face. She gets scared at first, but after calming down, Michele tells her everything. He explains that he has powers now, but he still doesn't know how to control them. Instead of being scared, Candela gets excited that her brother has superpowers. Still, Michele tells her to keep it a secret. Later, while trying to understand his powers, Michele hears Giovanna coming home. He quickly removes his clothes to become invisible again. Seeing the empty room, Giovanna thinks Michele isn't home yet. She calls a friend and starts talking about how strangely Michele has been acting lately. Then she says something shocking. She's afraid that Michele may have found out the truth that he was adopted as a baby. Hearing this, Michele runs out of the house in shock. He reaches the harbor and sits quietly on a swing. Everything he believed now feels like a lie. A few seconds later, Stella arrives nearby to practice her dance moves. She notices the swing moving on its own, but instead of getting scared, she asks if someone is there. Michele doesn't reveal himself. Instead, he draws a small smiling face in the sand. Stella gets excited. She thinks she's met an invisible person, so she challenges him to see who can swing faster. Michele accepts, and for the first time in days, he actually has fun. Soon, Stella has to leave for ballet practice. But before going, she says she hopes to meet her invisible friend again. This makes Michele really happy. But as he looks toward the port, he notices something strange. A man in sunglasses, staring directly at him, as if he can see him even though he's invisible. Michele brushes it off as his imagination. Later that night, he decides to visit Stella. He reaches her house and draws the same smiling face on her bedroom window. Stella understands immediately and lets him in. She covers him with a sheet and asks his name. But Michele says he can't tell her yet. As she gets closer to check if he's real, Michele gets nervous again, and suddenly, he becomes visible. Panicking, he runs back home and tells Candela everything. She tells him it's time to finally tell Stella the truth, so the next night Michele gathers his courage. Along with his dog Mario, he goes to the school gym where Stella is practicing. But before Michele can reach her, an unknown man suddenly breaks in. Holding a tranquilizer dart gun, he shoots Stella. Within seconds, she loses consciousness. The man picks her up and carries her to his van. But just as he's about to leave the school, Michele and his dog Mario see everything. Even though he's just a kid, Michele runs toward the man and grabs his arm, telling him to let Stella go. The kidnapper fights back and knocks him to the ground, but Mario jumps in and bites the man's arm. Still, the man manages to push them away, throws Stella into the van and tries to escape. Michele refuses to give up. He clings to the van door, but the man pushes him off and drives away with Stella. Soon after, the police arrive at the school. Giovanna rushes there to check on Michele. Thankfully, he and Mario are not hurt, but Michele tells her that Stella has been kidnapped. The police begin their investigation, but Michele decides to take matters into his own hands. He starts training by himself, trying to learn how to control his powers. Then he goes to get his superhero costume, but found out his mother washed it, and now when he wears it, he can't turn invisible anymore. Furious, Michele confronts Giovanna. He tells her that washing the costume took away his powers. She has no idea what he's talking about. In anger, Michele shouts that he hates her, and even says that she's not his real mother. Right after he storms out, the glass in the bookcase suddenly shatters, as if his anger caused it. On his way back to the port, he meets the same man in sunglasses again. This time, the man introduces himself as Andre, and claims that he is Michele's real father. Andre explains that he is a special, someone with powers that can change reality. Michele doesn't believe him at first. So Andre tells him the truth about the past. Years ago, after a nuclear war in Russia, some survivors were affected by radiation and developed strange abilities. Because of this, the government created a secret military lab called the Division, led by a Cold War general. They used these powered people for experiments. Andre had the ability to read minds and erase memories, but using his powers too much made him go blind. While in the lab, he fell in love with a woman named Elena. Even though specials weren't supposed to have children, they had a baby, Michele, but they knew the army would use him for experiments. So they escaped. Soldiers chased them. To protect her family, Elena stayed behind to fight, using her invisibility powers. Sadly, a sniper noticed a butterfly landing on her invisible body and shot her. Andre had no choice but to run away with baby Michele. He traveled across Europe searching for a safe place. Using his powers, he found Giovanna, a police inspector who dreamed of becoming a mother, and left Michele at her doorstep, but the Division never stopped looking for the child, because Michele could be the key to building an army of superpowered humans. Before leaving, Andre gives Michele a special suit. It has a Russian S symbol, and is made from the same material Elena once used. Moments later, Andre disappears just before Giovanna arrives with her colleague, Dr. Basile. After picking up Mario from the vet, they all return home. Michele rushes to his room to try on the new suit. A few minutes later, Dr. Basile calls him to have some tea while they wait for Giovanna. Still wearing the suit, Michele joins him in the living room, but when Basile hands him a cup, Michele notices bloodstains on the doctor's shirt. Something feels wrong. He says he needs to go to the bathroom and tries to leave, but Basile calmly tells him that all the doors are locked. Now trapped, Michele puts on his mask, removes his clothes, and turns invisible again. Basile chases after him, but when he reaches the kitchen, invisible, Michele starts throwing knives at him. Basile blocks them using a chair. Michele runs toward the living room, but Basile grabs a sack of flour and throws it all over the house. Now he can see Michelle's footprints on the floor. Step by step, he follows them back to the bedroom. Just as Michele is about to escape through the window, Basile catches him and slams him against the closet. That's when the truth comes out. Basile is also working for the Division, and he plans to take Michele to the lab so they can turn him into a powerful soldier. But Michele refuses to go. He suddenly kicks Basile, jumps out of the window, and escapes. As soon as he reaches the street, he turns invisible again and runs through the city. Soon he finds Ivan sitting on his motorcycle. With no time to explain, Michele tells him to start the bike. Ivan thinks it's a ghost but still speeds away. Meanwhile, inside the Division's lab, Stella is locked in a room. There she finds Martino and Brando. They've also been kidnapped. Stella tells them they need to escape fast. She looks around and finds an opening in the ceiling. The three of them form a human ladder and manage to climb out. At the same time, Ivan takes Michele to an old warehouse. There, Michele reveals himself and explains everything. Now that Ivan knows Michele has powers, he starts respecting him and tells him that Brando is also missing. They decide to make a rescue plan, but Michele has no idea where the others are being held. Back on the ship, Stella sneaks through the corridors using her gymnastics skills. She finally finds an emergency signal lamp. Remembering her invisible friend, she sends out a distress signal. Then she draws the same smiling face on the lamp and turns it on, just before a guard catches her again. Far away, Michele sees the light shining in the sky and recognizes the drawing. He knows Stella is there, so he and Ivan head straight for the ship. When they arrive, they see armed guards everywhere. Ivan tells Michele to turn invisible. Once he does, Ivan shoots the power box with his paintball gun. This causes a short circuit in the security system. Using this chance, Michele sneaks inside unnoticed. He finds the room where Stella is being held, grab a fire extinguisher, knock out a guard, and take his gun. Another guard appears, but Michele forces him to open the cell. He frees Stella, Martino, and Brando, and locks the guards inside instead. Then he reveals his identity. Everyone is shocked, especially Stella, but Michele tells them there's no time to waste, and orders them to leave the ship. But Stella says there's still another prisoner trapped somewhere, so Michele goes with her to rescue him. At the same time, Giovanna arrives home with Mario and finds the house completely destroyed. Suddenly, Andre appears outside. He quickly tells her that Michele is in danger. They rush off together to find him. Soon they find Ivan running from the soldiers. Using his mind-reading powers, Andre learns that Ivan knows where Michele is and asks him to help. Meanwhile, Michele follows Stella to another cell, but instead they walk into a submarine. Suddenly the lights turn on, and they realize they're surrounded. Then Stella points a gun at Michele. He's confused, but suddenly the division's general appears. He says he's been waiting for Michele. He's also a special with the power to control minds. He reveals that he's been controlling Dr. Basile, and Stella too. And then comes the biggest shock of all. The true leader of the division is Yelena, Michele's mother. She's alive, and she's been searching for him for years. The general tells Michele if he agrees to come to the division base, they will let Stella go home safely. Outside the ship, Giovanna breaks in looking for Michele. She runs into Basile, who now seems normal again, but Andre suddenly tells everyone to leave because Michele isn't on the ship anymore and the self-destruct system has been activated. With only seconds left, Andre, Giovanna, and Basile find Martino and Brando. All of them rush out just before the ship explodes. Meanwhile, inside the submarine, the soldiers take Stella to an emergency capsule that will send her back to the port. The general tells Michele that soon, he will finally meet his mother and the other specials, who are better than normal humans. But Michele refuses to leave his friends behind, and in that moment of anger, he awakens a new power. Using only his thoughts, he starts moving objects, controlling them, breaking things. Soon, the entire submarine begins to fall apart from the inside. Michele runs toward the emergency capsule, grabs Stella, and together they launch it to the surface. They finally reach the port, where their friends are waiting. Minutes later, the police arrive to check what happened. Right there, in front of everyone, Michele shows his invisibility power. Martino proudly announces that Michele is now the city's new superhero and gives him a name, the Invisible Boy. For the first time in his life, people respect him. But nearby, Andre calls Michele aside. He tells him that he needs to erase everyone's memory of what just happened. Michele doesn't want to do that, but Andre warns him, as long as people know his identity, the division will keep coming after him. With no other choice, Michele goes to Stella. In a soft voice, he tells her they'll meet again soon. She doesn't understand, but they share a goodbye kiss. Then Andre uses his power, and everyone forgets that Michele is the Invisible Boy. The next morning, a press conference is held. Without knowing the truth, the police give all the credit to Inspector Giovanna. Even though Michele knows what really happened, he's happy to see his mother being called the town's hero, and the two finally make peace. Later, Michele goes to the school gym. They're holding a party to celebrate the return of the missing students. Stella is there too, but she doesn't remember the hero who saved her. Even so, as she's about to leave, Michele gathers his courage to talk to her. Ivan and Brando try to stop him, but Michele pushes past them. Outside the school, he asks Stella if she'd like to walk home with him. Even though she remembers nothing, she smiles and says yes. Everything seems normal again in the city. But at the division's secret base, a soldier reports that Michele escaped from the submarine and also reveals something shocking. They've found his twin sister in Morocco. They've already started a mission to bring her back. Hearing this, Yelena smiles, because long ago she had twins, and Andre separated them to keep them safe from the division. So what did you think about this movie? Tell us in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this recap, don't forget to like and subscribe for more movie stories. See you in the next video.